Hello, this is Nice Wonder. Welcome to the Nowman Show special. The Roots of Society and the Enlightenment of Solutions. In the 21st century, there exists an unfathomable amount of wealth created and accumulated with the widest gap in wealth distribution in recorded history of humankind on this planet. Trillions of dollars supposedly aren't accounted for, to say the least. Some people believe, and some would like all of us to think, that this is just the way it is, and no system is perfect. Yet, it is blatantly obvious that the system which currently dominates is capitalism. And that system is primarily focused on markets, with commodities and services that over time have been and are creating vast amounts of capital, profits, and wealth. Now, in reality, capitalism was initially created and its productivity and the profit margins significantly increased through the imperialistic genocide and enslavement of millions of people. And perhaps by this time in the 21st century, we could say this number is now in the billions of people. It isn't based on a free market, and it's certainly heavily manipulated by human hands, regardless of what one believes about an invisible hand, or individualism and entrepreneurship, or even more so, personal and cultural, fiscal and moral responsibility, which is only an assumed quality of behavior when people talk about a so-called success story in the global marketplace. It proves to be a system that obviously isn't so compassionate, democratic, or otherwise moral throughout its entire history. By the way, capitalism hasn't existed and dominated for 300 years yet. And every 80 years or so in those last 250, there's been a major crisis of one kind or another. As recent as 2008, UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said in the 1980s, there is no alternative, essentially saying there is no successful alternative to capitalism. It is capitalism yesterday, capitalism today, and capitalism forever. However, when studying history, and specifically economic history, as economist Richard Wolff has said,
most people agree that in the decades before the collapse of the Soviet Union, you had a powerful central government with an elaborate secret police, with an elaborate system of controlling the population. Most Americans thought it was a dictatorship of one kind or another. They were tough, they could control the opposition. Yeah, and then they couldn't. Then despite all of their apparatus and all their secret police, the existing regime fell apart. The Soviet Union came to an end. I understand that there are powerful forces in the capitalist sector, in the government, that would want to stop this. But the fact that they have a lot of resources and the fact that they want to stop it is no more a guarantee that they'll be able to do that than it proved to be for the people who ran the Soviet Union. So I think we ought to take our hats off for a minute and understand every economic system in the history of the world has been born, has developed, and then has passed away. Capitalism was born in England in the 18th century, 17th century, has spread all over the world, changed in the process. It's now everywhere, but the question is it now passing away? The notion that capitalism, unlike any other system, will live forever and not pass away, yeah. I think the burden of that, proof of that, is on the people who believe it, not those of us who find it unbelievable.
No one can predict exact details, but clearly the capitalist system is failing, and some believe that we are quickly approaching a time of post-capitalism and the creation of the next system. Now, why would more and more people come to this conclusion? There are many factors to consider in analyzing the many crises that we are facing on this Earth planet. The roots in the tree are what keep the tree alive. Capitalism, as the dominant economic system, supposedly keeps the flow of goods and services going. That is the system as it is now. In order for this to really work effectively for the masses of people, there must be economic justice. Therefore, economic justice is the root of all justice. It is the root, the foundation of social, racial, gender, immigration, etc. And most of all, environmental justice. On December 10th, 1948, a document was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations that is called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It has been translated into more than 350 languages worldwide, including more than 100 African languages. It is an extensive document, but right now, all that I really need to focus on is Article 25, and here is what that article has to say about human rights. Check it out. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. Capitalism, which dominates, emphasizes a socioeconomic class-based system, which better explains the reason for the inequality. According to Oxfam International in 2017, 8 people on the planet now have as much wealth as the bottom 50% of the whole world's population. Yes, that's true. The United States of America supposedly has the greatest amount of accumulated wealth, but the distribution of that wealth is one of the worst in the modern civilized world. Most civilized and modern 21st century countries, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, have some form of government-administrated, single-payer, free healthcare system for all of its citizens. Why does the United States not have that, even when polls, including conservative ones, indicate that the people want that? And there is a proposal of Medicare for all. While Congress and the elites tell us that we can't afford it, at the same time, these same people personally themselves have a form of Medicare for all. Why are we allowing this to continue like this? Why don't we all have free health care? Why haven't people in the U.S. alone not recovered economically from the crash of 2008 that was created largely with predatory banking and lending practices, technically still legal and in place 10 years later? Activists at Occupy Wall Street and around the world in 2011 and 2012 were often chanting, "The banks got bailed out, we got sold out." Do you know what that means? After putting the final nail in the Glass Steagall Banking Act of 1933 and 1934, President Clinton also signed into law the Commodity Futures Modernization Act that allowed banks to once again engage in risky financial behavior on Wall Street, a behavior that led us to the Great Depression and stock market crash beginning in 1929, also allowed the banks to lead us into another crash in 2008.
Bill Clinton signed off on the Financial Service Modernization Act, the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, that made all these financial swindles legal.
Like derivatives?
All the collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps, all of that was made legal in a bipartisan, Republican-led Senate working with the Democrat Bill Clinton, and the worst one he signed off when he was a lame duck president. So, and Hillary Clinton knows all that.
And you mean Glass Steagall is what you're referring to?
No, Glass Steagall's the Financial Service Modernization Act. That was 2 years before, but when he's a lame duck president after the 2000 election, he signs off on the commodity futures, which is actually worse because Title III of the Commodity Futures Modernization Act said that none of these new financial devices, which were all hokum if the mafia did it, they'd throw them in the slammer forever. And none of that will be regulated by any existing law or any regulatory agency. The fact that people don't know that, Title III of the Commodity Futures Modernization, signed by Bill Clinton, tells you where the mass media has been all these years. It's just unbelievable.
And then 8 years later, we can see the banks led us directly into the crisis.
Well, because they were empowered to write these, take different mortgages and package them together and put a new label on and swindle people. I mean, it's just incredible.
The unemployment statistics are only the tip of the iceberg right now. There's also underemployed, re-unemployed, low-wage workers in gig and temporary jobs with little or no benefits. 94% of 15 million jobs created from 2008 to 2016 are those kinds of jobs. This doesn't even include the numerous stories of people who have given up the job search. And there isn't really any serious talk, let alone action, about creating millions of decent-paying jobs, even infrastructure jobs, to help this humongous portion of the U.S. population. If you have a good job, if you have a good retirement pension plan, own your own home, etc., this may not seem to be such a big deal. But all U.S. Americans should be deeply concerned and in the streets every day, doing something to express their concerns and worries for a system in deep decline that would allow circumstances like this to exist for half of its population or more. This is a global crisis, really. It's not just in the U.S. By the way, I have more questions for you. Why aren't we putting an end to homelessness? Why don't we stop poverty? Instead, we are perpetuating a system that allows that to increase. We are perpetuating a system that allows all forms of human suffering and also discrimination based on race, color, gender, sexual orientation, and more. There's abuse and death, even murder in the streets, and this happens on a daily basis without fair laws or even laws on the books being enforced. Why did we let the omnibus crime bill pass that created prisons for profit and put primarily more men and women of color behind bars? Why was the Welfare Reform Act gutted in the 1990s? Why have we deported millions and millions of people who really aren't hardcore criminals, especially between 2008 and 2016? Why have whistleblowing truth tellers such as Chelsea Manning been imprisoned? While some nations provide free college and university education for their people, why does the United States often require students to accumulate massive amounts of student loan debt that is now accumulated in the trillions of dollars? All of this is happening while millions are struggling to find decent paying jobs in this horrendous economy. Why are the wealthiest people and corporations being given an even bigger tax cut than the low one that they already had for over a decade? And there will probably be talk of cutting social programs like Social Security, kids' lunch programs, and SNAP, which is the new name for food stamps. The 2018 U.S. budget requested is over $4 trillion with a deficit of $400 billion, in part to reducing taxes for the 1%. And why is at least $700 billion of that for the military and war budgets? Why is this considered normal? The U.S. annual military budget is about the size of the next 6 highest countries' military budgets for 2018, including Russia and China. We have been in fake wars turned into wars on terror and drugs since 2002, and even before that, really. Speaking of drugs, why do we have an opiate epidemic and nothing really seriously being done to end it? It's one of the largest causes of death every year in the United States. Why does the richest country in the world have one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world? Many countries guarantee day care for children and extensive family leave for new parents. And why does the United States not guarantee it at all? Why is there emphasis on private schools even in the daycare industry? Why aren't we adequately prepared to lose millions more jobs with the advent of full automation in the not-too-distant future? Why isn't the USA radically transitioning our energy systems to solar, wind, and micro-hydropower systems to create electricity and other forms of clean energy, rather than continuing production and transport of fossil fuels all around the world, and especially to China and India? Can we really understand the disastrous circumstances that are perhaps beyond reversing? Did you know that the company Monsanto, known for GMOs, Roundup fertilizer, and non-environmentally friendly products, is banned in Switzerland, Japan, Germany, France, Greece, Austria, Russia, Peru, New Zealand, South Australia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Ireland, Luxembourg, and Madeira, but not in the US? Why do you think that is? What will it take to get millions more people actively involved in working on identifying, creating, and implementing solutions every day starting now? That may be the most important question of all. Real solutions do exist. I have talked about them a lot. A lot of people that I've personally interviewed, interviews and information that I have shared with you, even on this show. You've talked about the Green New Deal and also an emergency jobs program. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yes, we actually have an economic emergency. The recovery's really been at the top. For most Americans, it's a struggle, and the jobs that have come back are low-wage, part-time, temporary jobs. The average wages for workers are barely above poverty. So we want to tell it like it is. We have a jobs emergency, and we have a climate emergency. We can only fix them together. So we call for the creation of 20 million jobs, like the New Deal, where we created millions of jobs in a matter of months, actually. This time, those jobs will also transition our economy to clean, renewable energy, to a healthy, local, organic food system, and to public transportation. It turns out we also get healthy in the process here, because if you clean up the pollution that kills 200,000 people a year, and we have healthy food, and we've got public transportation. It's, it's like, what's not to love about this picture? In fact, it pays for itself just in the savings in healthcare alone, and it also makes wars for oil obsolete once we've greened our energy system. So this is like an emergency program that will revive our economy, and it will put an end to climate change, and it will end the crisis of unemployment and joblessness for once and for all. It basically creates the right to a job at a living wage.
Absolutely, and a lot of people will ask, how is that going to get paid for?
So it turns out we get so much healthier by getting rid of this polluting energy that we save enough money that it takes about a decade or so to pay back the cost of the transition. So yes, there's an investment here, but it's an investment that pays back right away.
Unless the people rise up and say enough, because we're even corrupting the courts now.
The reality is that the two-party system has not been serving we the people. And so until and when we rise together as a nation, as a world, as a country world, that's when we're going to bring about real change, believing in change and hope. That's where we stand at with Ed and being a supporter of Free and Equal Elections Foundation, which I founded, but it's for the people. This foundation's for you guys. And so that's really, consciousness is rising, and we are seeing what's real, what isn't real.
Well, this is Nice Wonder with the Nowman Show. I'm here with Congressman Kucinich. Thank you for being on the Nowman Show.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Now, we just heard a talk about big money in politics. Do you think that's the biggest challenge, the biggest problem facing our country right now?
It's a challenge, and it's a big one, but I don't think that we can arrange the challenges in which we face in terms of what's a priority. Everything's important. We have to think holistically about those challenges. So the degradation of the planet, it should concern all of us. War and the United States unbearable imperialism, that's a problem. Trade laws that don't allow for workers' rights, human rights, environmental quality principles. We need to change that. There are the fact that so many young people can't get a decent education. All of these things should concern us, and we have to have the ability to be able to hold multiple goals simultaneously and pursue a newer world without saying, well, first we got to take care of this and then we take care of that. No, there's so many different things that we have to work on simultaneously, and I think we're capable of doing that.
And some of us are working on implementing, even personally, whatever we can. Everyone needs to be on board. Everyone. I understand people in this capitalist system feel trapped, overworked and underpaid, strapped for free time, etc. After all, it is a system that demands more and more profits be created. Now, I understand that there are multiple family and other obligations, but everyone is going to have to take and make major sacrifices, or we will face even worse circumstances than what I briefly actually just went over. There is a Medicare for All system that already exists for some of our citizens. Universal basic income is a real short-term solution, and we can start now to create hundreds of worker-owned, democratically structured worker cooperatives in our communities, and as the number of cooperatives grow, we can get more and more people back to work. We can put pressure on the politicians to raise taxes on the rich and the wealthiest corporations again. That has been done before. It was as high as 94 in the 30s, 92% in the 50s. And it does bring more significant amounts of revenue into the system in order to help create millions more jobs. This has been done before with the New Deal in the 1930s. And this can also include providing more resources and support programs for entrepreneurs and those desiring to create worker cooperatives and for jobs focused on transitioning our energy systems. We can implement free college and trade school training programs, eliminate student loan debt, and even pass legislation to make all of these human rights part of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We can demand overturning Citizens United and any law that allows the floodgates of private corporate money and lobbyists to infiltrate our political system on all levels everywhere. We can create a new electoral process for proportional seat representation in our government legislatures, from local to state to federal, and open the system to more than just the two so-called political parties. We can implement ranked choice voting for presidential elections so that we aren't limited to the two parties or even to winner-take-all or electoral college systems. We can end superdelegates and coin tosses during the primary season. Stop using the cross-check computer program to remove eligible voters from the rolls and create other regulations to stop the gerrymandering of districts around the country and other corruption in the electoral process. We can do a lot of things to prepare for the next system. Change is inevitable. Critics of capitalism are on the rise, as they should be, as the system is analyzed in the 21st century by more people. The signs of a system in decline should clearly show us that the need to build a foundation for the infrastructure of a new system exists. This is not a new thing. There have been times in which this has been done in history. Even in the creation of the USA 250 years ago, a group of people knew that they didn't want to be ruled by the British monarchy or the Church of England. Surely we've come further along in our understanding since that time. If we haven't, we must be honest with ourselves if we want a future world that is truly compassionate, democratic, egalitarian, and equal. This will require much more than reform to address the crises that we have created through the system that dominates. The system that puts profits and money before people and planet. We need priorities of our system that are at the foundation, the basis, and the root of our societies to be more compassionate, equitable, democratic, equal, and egalitarian, truly putting the people and planet before profits and money. We must do this if we are to survive and then thrive on this planet. There's a lot every one of us can do to educate ourselves. I recommend movies such as The Inside Job, about the 2008 crisis, which won an Academy Award, The Corporation, which explains the obvious subject matter implied in the name, Shift Change, about worker cooperatives in Mondragon Valley in Spain, and others in Cleveland, Ohio, Brooklyn, New York, and the Bay Area of Northern California, and Naomi Klein's The Take, about the workers taking over factories in Argentina and creating worker cooperatives. DemocracyAtWork.info focuses on democratizing enterprises. What are you going to do for your part from here, now, and going onward? This is Dan Neiswender. We are the roots of the system, and we must be enlightened to create real solutions. Thank you for your time and tuning in to the Nowman Show.
The condition of truth is always to allow suffering to speak, suffering from wherever it comes. We are an inclusive group. Yes. Tea Party brothers and sisters look like the audience for Lawrence Welk in the National. I ain't got nothing against Lawrence Welk and Bubbles. We look more like an audience for Lupe Fiasco. Or we look more like an audience for Carole King and James Taylor. Yeah, we look more like an audience for Prince. That's the kind of audience we got. Yes, we come against the grain, but it's our common humanity So yes, we are open to prophetic Mormon brothers and sisters if they believe that corporate greed ought to be eliminated. That's right. Give the prophetic Mormon brothers and sisters a hand right now if they want to come here and join the movement. We're here for the progressive, agnostic, and atheistic brothers and sisters. Come and join the movement.
Imagine and enjoy with me the following thought. What would happen to the political life of Los Angeles if all of the people that came here today could begin systematically to work together to change this society?
The fact that Julian Assange published something that showed that Hillary Clinton and the DNC were illegally mining Bernie Sanders' run to become the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. That should have been public knowledge. We are actually a big family, but it's very difficult for people who only have access to network TV or cable TV or newspapers or things to actually arrive at the same conclusions that we may have done and to join the choir and start singing in harmony with all our brothers and sisters who care about the law and human rights and democracy and liberty, all the things that the United States government pretends it cares about, but it doesn't. It's only interested in feathering the nests of the Jeff Bezoses and Mark Zuckerbergs of this world and doing their bidding because they pay the government to do their bidding. And the people of America should not be fooled into thinking that the charade that they pretend is politics here is a two-party. It's not, it's one party with two different names. It's a Punch and Judy show, but Punch and Judy both work for the same corporate masters. And then the evidence is all there. It's plain to read. You only have to look at the way the inequality of wealth in the United States. What happened in COVID? Oh, it was a terrible disaster. It really hit everybody hard. We all lost our jobs. Restaurants, everything, business was, it killed no, it didn't. The oligarchs, the billionaires got richer and richer and richer all through COVID. And they will get richer and richer and richer all through the Ukraine war and all through all the further wars that come. And they did through Vietnam. You know, it's just the facts are there for anybody to see, but you have to be prepared to go, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like the truth, that this is a miracle. This is what Ronald Reagan called the American miracle. You know, it's not a miracle. It's a disaster for almost everyone. It's not a disaster for the top 0.2 of 1%. It's great for them. They can steal from the rest of us with no problems at all. They can use offshore havens. They never pay anybody any tax. And how can these people be worth hundreds of billions of dollars when there are homeless on the street, when you have no education system to speak of, no healthcare, no safety net, no love in this country for your brothers and sisters, or for your brothers and sisters in other countries over the land? So I don't know. I doubt that I will live to see it all change and that we will find ourselves living in a society at some point in the future where we do care for our brothers and sisters. But I so hope I see the first glimmers of light